So, Paul, welcome to the Hustlin with Houses podcast. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No problem. I know we've been trying to get this sorted for a little while. So, for people who don't know who you are, then give me a sort of brief overview of life before sort of business, if you like.
So, I came from a family of both parents working really, really hard, long hours. My dad was a chef and worked 2 jobs up in town.
Yeah.
And then eventually took the plunge to buy a restaurant, which at the time took over the business. It was thriving, doing really well. From the age of 14, I went and worked there, just washing up on the weekends, that kind of thing, and gradually kind of built up to learning how to cook and then going out the front and doing front of house, which as a 15-year-old, those kind of life skills that you learn being front of house at a restaurant was great because everyone was double my age. So I'm having to learn how to communicate with them. You're constantly problem solving. You've got time management, and they're all really important skills, I think, for running a business. But then the smoking ban came in. You're probably too young to even remember the smoking ban. And that kind of just wiped out a huge amount of business for hospitality. Pubs and restaurants were just empty. And then we had a parking restriction come in, and it just kind of died, the business. And I kind of witnessed my dad going through a really dark period, and he nearly lost the house. So I think from a young age, I understood kind of how business can affect you mentally and stuff like that. And I think that prepared me for when I started my first business.
Do you think that business that your dad done sort of drilled the business sort of side into you?
I think it had an impact. I would say, and it sounds so cliche, but watching things like The Apprentice was kind of what really excited me about business growing up. Yeah, watching The Apprentice, watching Homes Under the Hammer got me into the interest of property.
Yeah.
And kind of looking at things now, like I'm a true believer of like law of attraction. You put stuff out there. I think my addiction of watching The Apprentice has led to the moment where yesterday myself and my business partner were renewing our membership, our sponsorship, for the next year with a sponsor that is owned, the business is owned by Lord Sugar. Yeah. And I think everything kind of happens for a reason, and it aligns you to where you are now. So yeah, it probably did have an impact. Yeah. But I would say my interest in business, and from the age of like 16, 17, going to events, listening to Dragon speak, so Duncan Bannatyne, James Caan, stuff like that. I think I just had that hunger and that addiction to business and probably money as well. Yeah. From a young age.
Yeah. So the events thing then, because obviously, like you say, sponsored by basically Alan Sugar, a brand that he owns, which is incredible. How did that come about then? Because I know we had a brief chat before we come on about the events business, and I was sort of picking your brain on it. How did that sort of come about, the sponsorship?
So it's quite surreal actually, because we had only just finished our second event. So second event, we had 180 people, which was an achievement in itself. Had a couple of sponsors at that time, and it was companies like second-hand car sales and caravans and just anything and everyone we could get to help structure the events and help with the expenses. And then a couple of weeks after the event, we were copied into an email, which Lord Sugar was copied into, just basically saying they came to the event, they really enjoyed it, they'd love to speak to us about collaborating and sponsoring the event. And this was a trademark business called Trademark Wizards, and we kind of looked at it and thought, it's probably not him. And then he actually responded to the email quite quickly. That's and mad. Said, yeah, don't have a problem with this. Let's get them trademarked internationally. So they trademarked us all over the world for something like 100 different things relating to entrepreneurship, business, stuff like that. And that was kind of the start of it. And Lord Sugar did a video talking about the event, talking about trademarking, and that really, I feel, got us on the map of being a company that was recognised by someone like that. And if Lord Sugar has recognised that and wants to be associated with that brand, then it's probably an event that you should attend as well. I think a lot of people attended the third event in the hope that Lord Sugar was going to be on stage for some reason, but you never know in the future. But yeah, it's a goosebump and pinch yourself moment, that one.
Yeah, especially from saying, like, getting into business from sort of watching the likes of The Apprentice and stuff like that. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. So, and like you said, we were chatting before about the events, and like I remember you saying, I was listening to a podcast of yours, and you said it's not a great money maker. You know, you might make a few grand there and there from the events or whatever, but it sort of elevates your brand. Like, how does it sort of elevate your brand in terms of what other benefits do you get from the event business?
So if you imagine like going to a networking event, and let's just use our one as an example. So there's 250 people in a room. Yeah. If you attend that event, you're never going to network with even 10, 15% of the people in that room, because it's impossible. You don't have enough time. But being that host of that event and having that stage where at one moment of the night that you get to stand on that stage, introduce yourself to people that don't know who you are already. It's 250 people all listening to you at the same time. That's one pitch to 250. Yeah. It's a great place, one, to build your credibility, but two, to basically just get it out there and let people come to you after if they feel that you're aligned with them. Yeah. So the networking opportunities as being the host is massive. But for myself and Aaron, like my business partner Aaron, it's something that we're quite passionate about. So it's aimed at young entrepreneurs and people starting a business off. And both of our businesses, we both run sort of programs and training academies, are focused on helping people from the ground level up. So again, it's aligned with our other businesses, so it kind of made sense. It's a great way of cross-selling almost our services, but without actually selling it on stage. Yeah,
this of course is a property podcast, but I did want to go into the other businesses you have. So you have the event business, you have the sourcing business. I don't know if you still have that. Do you still have that? Yeah, you still have the sourcing business. What are some of the other businesses you have, or are they the main two?
So I've got the education business,
of course,
which is I'm quite proud of it, to be fair, because I think there's lots of property educators out there, and I came from a sales background, so I've been a sales trainer for 12 years.
Yes,
and I feel like that brings a different view and angle on property, because I'm more sales focused. How are we going to pitch this? How do we turn it into something that works for every investor? That kind of thing. Whereas if you go on a property course, you're kind of taught strategy, and sometimes strategy isn't enough, because you need the skills on how to negotiate deals, you need the skills on how to objection handle, how to sell your deals. But on top of that, you also need to understand social media as well. I think lots of people spend so much time posting on social media, but there's no real outcome from what they're posting, because it's not the right post. Yeah. So yes, they're consistent with their posting, but the quality isn't there. There isn't a call to action. There isn't a hook. They don't understand it. So we created Training Made Simple Academy, which encompasses 3 training businesses: property, social media, and sales. So we've got that business. We've got this. I don't like to call it a sourcing business, because we're not really sourcing individually for people. So what we did is we created a one product fits all model, and that is a tenanted model where 7.5% yield, turnkey properties, already tenanted, cash flowing from day one. So it's a landlord to landlord selling service, basically. So lots of landlords put off selling their property because they don't want to spook the tenants, and the tenants move out and then they're left holding the baby with paying the mortgage. Or two, it's a struggle to sell a tenanted property because most estate agents sell based on the number of viewings they put out there. And a vendor and a tenant are very different people. There's no incentive for the tenant to oblige 20 viewings a week. So it becomes quite a difficult thing to do, and the more times people request viewings, the more time the tenant rejects it, the quicker the estate agent loses interest, and then that property stays stagnant on the market. So we thought, if we can create a business whereby we have landlords looking to sell tenanted properties and we have landlords looking to buy tenanted properties, we can sell them discreetly off market not spook the tenants. Tenants will work with us because we might only book 1 or 2 viewings as opposed to 2 a day, that kind of thing. And it took off. We really did well. But the problem last year with tenanted properties is that buy-to-let mortgages just weren't our friend. And affordability and the way they're valued right now is very different to the way home owner-occupied properties are. So we're still running that business, but it's not my core focus right now until that buy-to-let market sorts itself out.
Yeah. I knew this anyway. I knew that you had that business, and I thought it was absolutely incredible because every man and woman and their dog has a sourcing business, but it's your typical BRR, maybe, you know, HMOs and stuff like that. But that business that you've done is incredible. And I was listening to a podcast of yours recently. Well, I think you were a guest on one, and you said about going to play golf for like a few months and like, you know, thinking about what you actually want to do and then coming back and doing this. And I just thought that was such an incredible idea. Because it's a problem, isn't it? And like you say, so are agents involved, or is this direct to landlord and then you sell into another landlord? Or how are you sort of sourcing the properties? Don't want to give away your secret sauce.
So no, look, it's what I train in the academy now. So I don't hold back in what I train. So it's a combination. If we're using social media, then I'm typically getting a lot of direct to vendor deals from on the likes of Facebook and LinkedIn, or even getting deals from TikTok right now. If I'm looking at deals that are on the market, it's just a case of building relationships up with the right estate agents, typically independents, not nationals. They're a bit harder to work with, but building strong relationships up with them whereby they can see the value that we bring to them. So what I mean by that is everything that we do is pound per hour, right? So if I said to you, you're going to get paid £1,000 to do a job, whether it takes you 2 days or 10 days, you're going to want to do everything you can to get that get that done in 2 days, because then your pound per hour increases. It's the same with estate agents, right? If you know you're only going to earn 2% of the sale price, regardless of if you sell it in the first viewing or it takes you 3 months, you're going to want to do everything you can to get it sold as quickly as possible. So if an estate agent knows that their strong point is not selling tenanted properties, that's a problematic property for them to take on. And we're a company that can work with them, not cut them out of the deal, but provide a solution to a problem they have, knowing we don't have to list it, we don't have to take any phone calls, we don't have to do any viewings, we don't have to constantly be calling the vendor up or the tenants up to try and negotiate viewings, access, stuff like that. But we're still going to make 2%. It's a no-brainer for those businesses. And we've got lots of companies that we've worked with over the years where we've done 30, 40 deals with them. And we get those deals before they even hit the market. But at the same time, if they've got deals that have been sat on their book for 3 months, then we negotiate those deals to effectively go from on-market to off-market. So they'll archive the listing, and then we take that. They're still instructed, but we take that and we offer it to our clients. So effectively, it's still an off-market deal, but we're always direct to vendor, even if there is an agent included.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, and I think there's not that I know of many people doing that. But do you approach many auctions? So do you approach estate agents with that and say, listen, we can offer this service? Is that right?
So I have a bit of a process in doing it, because I think you only ever want to pitch this idea to the decision maker. So if you know it's John Smith Property Estates and it's a family run business and he's still working there, ideally you don't want to be ringing up the main number and speaking to the person who answers the phone and asking for their boss, because their boss probably isn't going to answer the phone. So if I see that they're listing a property that I'm interested in, what I will do first is target the owner on LinkedIn and just approach them that way. Look, we're looking at properties in your area. You came up. Love to set up a call with you, see how we can help each other. We've got lots of investors looking to buy in your area. Might be a great collab. And then set up directly with them, and then they will feed that back down the food chain to the negotiators, the trainees. So basically their word is gospel. So whatever property we then call about, it's not a case they have to keep referring back to that person, that owner, because that order's already been passed on. The most important thing that we do is that first property has to be the best experience with them. So that's the test run, right? They're going to do one property, and if that property falls at the first hurdle, they're going to judge you on that and not work with you again. And you can always bet that the most important deal is going to be the most problematic, right? There's going to be lots of stuff thrown at you. But I've had lots of deals where that first deal has fallen down, but because of not losing communication with them, so because of keeping them updated, this is the problem, this is what we're doing, we're trying to overcome it, we're doing this, we're doing that. If they can see that you're doing everything you can to keep that deal on board, and look, deals fall through, right? It happens.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how good you are or how motivated you are to get that deal through, there are just some things that will come up during conveyancing that kill a deal, and there's nothing you can do. And I think the biggest problem is when that line of communication dies. When they can't get hold of you and you're burying your head in the sand, that's the biggest problem that most sources face right now, trying to build relationships up with agents. Yeah.
And it's like you say, it's just communication. Most agents know. I think it's statistically 1 in 3 properties fall through that go through with estate agents. But that is incredible. It's really outside the box thinking. So is this from when you done the little golf trip and went play golf for a few months and like sort of refreshed your mind? And because what was happening before that then? Did you have other businesses, obviously the training business and stuff like that?
Yeah, I had the training business, and I also had a business partner on another property business doing something similar. And it was all around the time of like COVID and stuff like that. We were gradually like pulling away from each other. But I just had enough dealing with property investors. I just found them an absolute headache. And I would say it was worth 120. They would say it was worth 110 because it favoured them to say it was worth 110. And it was just this constant tug of war, this battle. And I just thought there's got to be an easier way to run this business. So I took six weeks off the summer holidays, played golf, played it on my own, so it gave me time to think, rebranded the business. I spent over 10 grand rebranding the business. And I just went out and networked a lot. And I just went to an event, non-property related. Like I said to you, I prefer those events. I met a financial advisor. He found it interesting that I was in property.
Yeah.
He had clients that were interested in property, but that was where that talk kind of ended. And we just agreed to meet up again and just said, well, look, what if we can build this one product that fits the financial criteria that they're looking for? So price point, location, yield, ROI. Could we give that a go? And we got a portfolio of 5 houses on. We gave that to them, and they sold that in like 3 weeks. Like 5 individual investors, they bought 1 each. And that was kind of the light bulb moment that I always say there's 3 hats in a property sourcing business. You got sourcing, selling, progressing.
Yeah.
You can't do all 3.
No.
You might be able to do 2, but you can't do all 3. And I thought, what hat do I least enjoy wearing? And that was the selling hat. I like the sourcing hat because that's the problematic, problem-solving kind of creative side of property that I enjoy doing. I could do sales progression, and I think everyone needs to understand sales progression, because sales progression is where the deal, like you said, 1 in 3 fall through, and they fall through when they go into sales progression, when they go into conveyancing. Half of them wouldn't fall through if the people that sold the deal understood the processes, the timelines, and what they can do to assist the solicitors in getting things done as quickly as possible. And usually it's just time. It's time that kills that deal. It goes on too long. Everyone then becomes a bit inactive, and then circumstances change. The buyer says, I'm not going to sell now, or the buyer says, I'm not going to buy now. The seller says, I'm not going to sell, and it falls through. So, I realised I was going to outsource all the selling to that company, and that allowed me to purely focus on source.
That's brilliant.
And then I brought in a sales progressor who I'd worked with previously, 20 years experience, super bullish as well, absolute bulldog with a set of teeth, would annoy every solicitor, but then be their best friend at the end because they got it through a month sooner than they expected to. And we just had a really good conveyor belt. And I think you've probably heard, but I use that golf analogy that the sourcing is the tee, and then the chip onto the green is the selling the deal, and then putting it into the hole is sales progression. But it can take you like 20 putts. So it's one of the most important parts to understand.
Sales progression. I used to work in a estate agency, and I know the stress they used to go through. Even it's absolutely crazy. So fair play to the man or woman you have working for you. But I think that is incredible, and I think people will pay a lot of money for that information you've just given. I heard it recently when I was listening to a podcast that you done, and you told that story, and I was just like, oh my God, that is incredible. No one's doing it. You've just took a different avenue in terms of going obviously doing the goal thing, having a thinking what can I do, and then even going to different networking events and just trying different things, doing things that people aren't doing. I don't know if we are on air or off air when we were speaking about this, but like you say, you go into these property events and it's the same people every time. It's like, it's half pointless because, you know, you're connecting with these people, but you're seeing them every month, and like you say, it's your competition basically.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on like property events then, in terms of would you still go with them, or?
So I support certain property events that support me, and the ones that I tend to go to, one, are going to be local to me, and the main reason is if I'm ever travelling, it's because I'm speaking at one.
Yeah.
But the ones I favour to go into are the ones that I can actually sit there and enjoy, and not feel like I'm constantly being told to run to the back of the room and I can get a 10 grand course for £1 today.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of events go wrong, is that they sell on stage, and I think the only thing that should be sold on stage is you. And if people like you and they feel that there's value, they'll follow you, and then they might see a bit more content, and then once they've seen enough content, then they'll be intrigued to buy from you if you're selling something. But it's kind of like going to the cinema and there being adverts. Like, it takes the fun out of the film. I think we're all blessed with like Netflix now, where there's no adverts. Or if there's something we're watching on standard TV, we record it now so that we can fast forward the adverts. And that's how I see the pitches at some of these events. But like we spoke off air, not everybody has events set up the right way where they can take out the pitches and selling the courses, because the courses are effectively the money that pays for the event. So I do understand it. But for me, I go to the ones that I can enjoy and not sit there and feel like I'm being pitched to. Yeah.
So with your events then, how are you attracting these big guests? Because you've had mega guests like Rob Moore. You've had loads. How are you attracting these guests?
So I guess it's just selling your vision. I think that's the main thing. Like, we have a very clear, so if we're talking about peak performance, we have a really clear vision of who our audience is, the demographic, age group, interest, stuff like that. We have a really clear vision of the actual philosophy around the event, why we're doing it. It's not a money maker for us. Every single event makes money, but we've never taken a penny out of it, because we just want to keep reinvesting it into a huge brand, a huge events company that we can leave as like a legacy behind us to say we built that. We're just launching a clothing brand. The clothing brand, again, isn't going to be a massive money maker, but it's going to be something else that's going to push the brand out there. So the bigger the brand is, the bigger the exposure, the bigger the collaborations you do and the associated people you work with, sponsors, Lord Sugar, that kind of thing. That all helps with attracting those bigger names. I think it's when you get those bigger names and you're not wanting to pay them, yet you're wanting to charge £200-300 tickets for people to come, and they kind of feel a bit like, well, you're making money out of my generosity. I think that helps. But the main thing is, I think because we're not a property event, a lot of people see that as a completely different, untapped audience.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing, is it's all about the audience and how the audience will react to them. And I think our audience is different every time. I'd say we have 50% loyal, 50% new every time. So there's always a fresh set of eyes on our speakers.
Yeah.
But I think the way that we promote our events, the money we spend on videography and getting some really cool videos done, I think that helps sell it massively as well.
And they're not small events, they're quite big events, aren't they? It must be quite daunting. I couldn't imagine doing something like that. It's quite a scary thing when you think about it. Has it been quite scary for you, or are you know what? I imagine it's a buzz as well, like once it's done and everything's done, and a massive buzz.
See, I look at it as not too dissimilar to working in the restaurant. And I think the thing with Aaron and I is we both know what hat we wear. So we know each other's strengths. So my strengths are the logistics of piecing all the bits together of the event. Aaron's really good at networking and getting the speakers on board and getting the sponsors on board. So I think because we've got completely different skill sets, but they're complementary, it makes it less daunting as opposed to if it's something you've never done before, then that imposter syndrome, that overwhelm, that fear of rejection will come in. I think because we're both quite confident in what we're doing, we've both got good audiences, it's not been too bad. I think the first event, we had that butterflies. Is this going to work? Are we going to lose money? We got 70 people there, which
good going,
by some standards is more than some events that have been running for many, many years attract. So we got 70 people there, but I remember walking home, I think it must have been about 1 o'clock after the event finished, and we packed up and just kind of was unwinding, and Aaron called me and he said, we did it. And it was such a buzz. And I just remember the biggest part of that was the feedback from everyone saying, I've got to say, we were just constantly waiting for an upsell and it never came. And that was like the light bulb moment for us that this is what people want from an event. They want to come away and feel like they haven't been sold to all night, and that they can truly come away and say, I learnt a lot and I networked with some really good people and just had a really good time.
Yeah, that's it. Because when you are at these events, let's completely too, when you're at these events, you're just waiting, and it's almost like, again, like you're waiting for it to them to try and sell you something.
The build up. Like sometimes I feel like I'm sitting there and I almost imagine this music in the background getting louder because I can hear the tee up story, the sob story of rags to riches and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, everybody has a story. Like we just spoke, but I don't think that's the reason people should come on board with me because my dad nearly went bankrupt. That's a learning lesson that I've applied in my business. The reason people would want to work with me is because of the value that I can provide, not because they relate to a sub story. But yeah, I definitely think understanding what people want is the key to having success in selling a product, a service, tickets to an event, whatever it is. If you just run away with the idea that what you think everyone wants, you're probably not going to attract people. You need to listen to what people want and what people enjoy, and then build that event around an actual real audience. Yeah.
So to an audience then, obviously, LinkedIn, you've done really, really well on that. You absolutely smash it. What are your thoughts on sort of Instagram? Are you not a big, because I heard you say something that none of your sort of sales, if you like, have come sort of through Instagram. Is that right?
Yeah, Instagram, I think, unless it's one of those, unless you're putting out some controversial videos that are gonna get one or two that kind of take off, and then all of a sudden the algorithm then starts working in your favor. Like, it's a slow burn. It's like YouTube, like we said, like it's a really slow burner. I would honestly say you have to post across all 4 platforms, right? TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. But I don't get, if I was talking about, if I was ranking them, LinkedIn's the most successful, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram for me. If I couldn't post on Instagram and it automatically goes straight onto Facebook, would I post on Instagram as much? Probably not, just because it's not a good use of my time. I get much better results on Facebook and LinkedIn.
With Facebook, do you post in groups and stuff like that, or? Yeah,
groups are great because somebody has spent time building an audience of 30, 40,000 people, and if you say something in that group that resonates with even 1% of the group, then that's a huge amount of people seeing your post, whether it's educational, it's inspirational, whether it's something that is like a call to action, maybe it's about an event or whatever it might be. That's a lot of people. So if you can get in as many groups as you can and start posting, then that's great.
Yeah. How do your posts differ then? I always ask this when people come on. How do your posts differ from sort of TikTok to LinkedIn or Instagram to LinkedIn? Does it change much? Or do you post the same stuff on each platform?
So same message, but different language.
Yeah.
So obviously cool, LinkedIn, I would always go with like a landscape post, and then the way that the wording would be is the first 3 lines are like the intrigue. So if there's only one line that's an intrigue or hook, then I'll press enter a couple of times to encourage them to read down. The language will be more professional.
Yeah.
Whereas Instagram would be a bit more casual, and then sometimes I mix it up. Facebook can either be the same as Instagram or it can be the same as LinkedIn. And then something like TikTok, it's just short, sharp and punchy. It's rarely much content on that video. So sometimes it's the same picture, but orientation's different. So like for obviously Insta, it's going to be square, but for LinkedIn, it will be landscape. For Facebook, it will be landscape, but then for TikTok, it will be portrait. Yeah. So it is adjusting them all, but with things like Canva now, it's really easy to do that as well. Yeah.
So touching back then, because obviously, like I say, it is a property podcast, and it really inspired me and really interested in the sort of property business that you've created. If you were going back now, or even advice to me, because I get a lot of people now asking me, oh, are you sourcing? And I do get a lot of deals sent to me, whether that's local estate agents or I do a lot of direct-to-vendor stuff, and I naturally get quite a lot of deals coming towards me. And if I can't buy them, I either pass them on to a friend or my mate or my brother or whoever. But I'm always getting people asking me, oh, are you sourcing? Going back to the start, well, when you had the sort of golf thing and all that, what advice would you give me now or anyone listening to start a successful sourcing business?
So understand what your niche is. I think that's the main thing. There's one of the biggest problems with sourcers right now is that they're sourcing anything and everything for everyone and achieving very, very little. Yeah. So you live in Liverpool, but you've got John in Birmingham asking for land. You've got Tom in Newcastle looking for a block of flats. You've got Sarah in Lincolnshire that wants a 3-bed that she can convert into a 5-bed. You can't be an expert at everything. So the main thing is to understand your strengths. So if what you're saying to me is you're looking for, let's say your business is, we look for 2 beds that we can convert into 3 beds, so add value by adding a room. If that's your business, then you just want to start attracting an investor database looking for that same product as you are, but they just get the leftovers. Yeah. And then that way you've got people there all the time. You might be in a position where you can only afford to fund half of that property, and if you've got investors there, you can say, well, look, I haven't got this one to sell, but we could JV on it. And that's kind of like the same thing with me. I only ever talk about tenanted property, and because I only talk about tenanted property, I only attract landlords that want to sell that product, but then I only attract investors that want to buy that product. So John, Tom and Sarah won't contact me because they know that's not what I specialise in. Yeah. So you want that one clear message, what you do, to be the thing that resonates with people. And if you're doing it yourself as well, and you're constantly putting content out there, showing it, that will inspire people that I like what this guy's doing, I want to do a bit of that as well, and they'll get in contact. So understanding your niche is probably the most important thing. And then just kind of setting that boundary of, like, when is a deal for you and when is it a deal to pass on? And just like appreciate. And I would say have it as like quite a high threshold. So like for me, like an assisted sale, the threshold is a minimum of 200% return on investment. I don't think it's worth me doing anything that isn't going to be 200% return on investment. So if it's not at that, I sell that deal on. And I've had some that have been like 180. And I think if I move the goalposts on this deal, then I've kind of just lost all of that discipline that I've been building up. And then it just increases your profit margins. And I think you need that increased gap now because of the risk element, the unpredictability of valuers and what they're going to say your property's worth and what someone's going to offer for it. So I think you need that buffer. So even if I set out with a deal being 200% return on investment, there is still a chance that I might only net 100% if it's downvalued or if I don't get the full asking price. So I think any movement on what your kind of bottom price is just kind of restricts your profitability, and I think you just need to be strict with that. Yeah, that's interesting. I like the bit about the niching down as well, because I don't know how much would you say niche down in terms of, like you said, someone maybe converting 1-bed flats to 2-bed flats. I've done that a couple of times and it works really well. Is that like and would you say obviously that's a niche, but niche down that much? Like obviously you do tenanted properties, but that's quite it's not a big niche, but do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I think it depends how much time you can give it, right? So if you're saying, like, right now, I am full on 6 days a week, doing all the properties that I'm currently working on. If you can't give it any more time than you're already giving it, then it literally has to be the same as your criteria.
Yeah, that makes, yeah.
If you say, well, look, I've got a team now and I'm only doing this 3 days a week, so now I have 2 days a week to focus on another business, maybe you're going to podcast one day and spend a day sourcing, or you could probably broaden it a bit to maybe like general conversion, so things that could go from 1 bed to 2 bed flats, 3 bed houses to 5 bed HMOs. Maybe you're known as the person for conversions, that kind of thing. Even a house to flats. It's just ideal properties to be converted rather than refurbished. But again, everything is specific, like to that person. It's so hard to give a set piece of advice and it be generic enough to be the answer to everyone's question.
Yeah.
I think it's always like, I get a lot of sources say to me, how long do you think it will be until I get my first deal? It's an impossible question to answer, right? Mm-hmm. Are you working full time? Are you doing this just weekends and evenings? Are you doing this full time? Are you scared of picking up the phone and speaking to an estate agent? Are you active? Do you have your investor database? Are you confident? Like, there's so many variables involved in it. It's an impossible question to answer. It's not until you get to know someone and you understand their background and their circumstances that you can answer that question. Yeah. So for you, I would say just try and keep it so that you're not doing too much outside of your bread and butter, but have it as that add-on business. And look, in a year's time, you can always expand that. It might become, I mean, like, my biggest intake of mentees right now are not newbie property sourcers, they're tired landlords. So they're landlords going, this 18-year-old's just been on a £1 course and he's just charged me £3,000 to find me a property. Now I own this property in Liverpool for £100, which brings in 600 quid. I net 250 a month. That's £300 a year. And it's got 35 grand of my money in it. I may as well just start selling these deals on and making 3 grand without any liability whatsoever. And that's what I'm seeing now. There's lots and lots of people like you that you say, I'm doing it, I'm a landlord, but I'm getting more deals than I can take. But at the same time, is it really worth me putting my money into it? And is it really worth me taking the risk? And I can earn an annual rent just by selling the deal on. And I could do, like you said, maybe 2, 3, 4 a month. It's good money. 12 grand, that's more money than they're probably seeing annually net in their property portfolio. Yeah.
It's interesting. And again, off air, we were talking about the buy-to-let thing, where the turnkey buy-to-let, obviously if you're a high net worth individual and you want to place your money somewhere safe, beat inflation and whatever, but putting 30 grand into a property to get net 200 quid a month, is it really worth it? It is mad when you actually think about it. Yeah.
And that's a 100% occupancy, no voids, and the boiler not breaking or the fence not falling down. Like, you think £3,000 for a whole year's worth of maintenance doesn't go far at all. Like, one bad month could wipe out 2 years' profit potentially.
100%.
And that to me, I'd be sitting there just thinking, what am I doing this for?
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask as well, again, I've heard you speak about in the past, is your sort of average fee as a sourcer. Your average fee compared to like your average sourcer, like we spoke about before, is incredible. So what is your average fee as of at the moment, or the past couple of years?
So 2022 to 23, the average fee was 11,200. I don't know what it is on 23 to 24 yet, because we're not at the year end, and it won't be near that, because we really had a lot of down valuations which reduced our fee. But typically our average fee, like the bottom line, will be 10 grand. That'll be like the bottom fee that we'll be asking for. Some deals will go through below that because of down valuations, or there'll be a deal that I'll look at and think, well, the fee's lower, but I can sell this like that. It's, again, £1 per hour. If it's only going to take me less than half a day to package it, pass it on to the financial advisor, they get it sold, and then my sales progressor progress that, 7 grand, it's kind of worth it. That's incredible, you know.
How have you? It's mad, that business. When I was listening to you, I was just thinking, this is crazy. Like, how is it? It's incredible. And like you say, really cliche, but the riches are in the niches, aren't they? It's mad, absolutely mad, but really, really interesting. And some other things I wanted to ask you, like, I know I was listening to another one and talking about, I think it is your daughter is she homeschooled, your daughter?
She's private school.
Private schools,
They both are now.
Yeah.
So the second one started in September.
What was the reason for that then? Because I know she was obviously in public school.
Yeah.
And everyone knows people's thoughts on the public schools, especially if you're quite business-minded. It is a load of garbage, really, isn't it? Yeah. So what was the reasoning behind that? Did you go to public school for a bit and then? Yeah,
she went for 2 years, and she just was coming home full of energy still. She wasn't being challenged, and typically when we'd ask about the day, it was mainly focused around the teacher being occupied with the naughty kids. And it wasn't compulsory to read. It wasn't, they didn't get homework, and the values just weren't there for me. And I had friends that were at private school, their kids were at private school, and they would come over and I'd see them like reading some full-on adult book, and I'm thinking, God, we're like struggling on the easy books. So we made the choice to move her halfway through the year. It was last January, and it really made us realise when she started there, and it must have been quite tough for her, how far behind she actually was by going to that state school. And I don't think the realisation kind of came to play until probably just before we broke up for Easter. But my youngest started in September, so she started reception, she's 4. And seeing where she is at in just 6 months, I would say it's where my daughter was when she left in year 1, in year 2 actually. Yeah. The state school, like worlds apart. And it's not only that, it's the demographic of people that are there. So they're all businessmen and women, and it's great for networking, but it's also really good for your mindset, because they always say like you're the average of the 5 people that you're surrounded by. And for me, being surrounded by CEOs of banks and funds, and I mean, like one of the dads, Rob Beckett's daughter, is in my daughter's class and stuff like that. And it's just cool, like in the morning, to start your day off having good conversations with people, rather than people rushing because they're late to get the train to their 9 to 5. Yeah. It's quite easy to say, oh, you got the dogs, should we go for a walk? And I might spend the first hour of the day with one of the dads just going for a walk in the woods with the dogs. And it's like a great way. It kind of replaces me starting the day off with a podcast or something like that. Yeah. So it's a really good vibe, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like I always say to my students, like, don't go for the £30 gym. Go for a health centre, go for like a Virgin or a David Lloyd's or something like that, or a Nuffield, because the people that you're around are your ideal clients. Yeah. The amount of business that I get from Virgin that I'm at, whether it's in the gym or in the cafe, I work from the cafe quite a lot. Yeah. It's insane, the conversations you're having with people that you never would have because you're not in the right room around the right people. So yeah, that is kind of, it's an investment into them, but it's also an investment for me as well, because it's being around the right people. Yeah, people listening are probably thinking, why has he just asked that question? But that's exactly why. Like, I just wanted to, I think it's such an interesting thing, and putting yourself in them sorts of environments, it definitely elevates you 100%. And it was just an interesting thing that I heard you say, and I thought that is really, really interesting. Even the David Lloyd thing of being in certain gyms and stuff like that. We have a joke between me and a couple of like friends. Like when we were younger, you used to go out and you say, "Oh, how have you been? What you been up to?" And you're all right. You're like, "Yeah, shit in it." It's like, what the? No, it's not shit. No. Like that. Do you know what I mean? And like different environments. And then when you put yourself in other rooms and they're speaking about business or it's uplifting, it's absolutely refreshing. So I've got this thing at the moment of pulling as many of my mentees out. So right now we've got 40 in the academy. Pulling as many of them out to networking events, especially if they've never been, and getting them over this awkward feeling of I've never been before, and just getting them into that room, because you know when you get them in a room full of like-minded people, not John and Tom down the pub, that it's shit on the building site and they got rained on and stuff like that, but being in a room full of money makers or aspiring money makers
Yeah.
and listening to talks from people that are doing what you want to be doing
100%.
5 years in the future, that kind of thing. That is the way that you should be spending your weekdays, your weekends, your evenings. I mean, like tomorrow, I'm going to an event tomorrow. I don't need to go to events, but I'll meet some cool people there. I may learn something from the speaker. I don't know. I have no expectations, but I see that as a good use of my Friday. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't do too much, if I'm honest, on a Friday.
Yeah.
But it's a good use of my time because it's great networking opportunities. There might be collaboration there. And more importantly, there could be ticket sales for my event. There could be a new client, a new mentee. There could be someone wanting to sell their property. Could be an investor. There's so many people that could be there. But if I'm not putting myself in those rooms, you'll never know.
Interesting. One thing I did want to touch on, I've never really educated myself on it or learned about it really, but assisted sales, I know you do quite a few of them. How do they sort of work then? And obviously they sound quite profitable. How do they sort of work?
So I do as many as I can find, but I think because I've got such a high return on investment, I probably do a lot less than I could do if my expectations were lower. But for me, because I like to invest my money into business and I know my return on investment in a business is high, my risk aspect on something like an assisted sale is probably a lot lower than other people. So the kind of things that I do on an assisted sale is look at a property that has some reason why it isn't selling. And if I can't work it out, I'll speak to the agent and quite innocently say, like, how comes you think you haven't sold this? And just give them the opportunity to just give me verbal diarrhea, all the excuses why they haven't sold it. And then I'll go away and I'll think about, right, what's the solution that I can provide? What can I do to that property to get it to maximum value? And what is going to de-risk it for me as well? So typically I only do assisted sales on properties that are going to work as the end product for my investors. So that's the first thing.
That's cool, yeah.
It's quite rare, and I've probably only done it once. I've done it twice actually, where I've given it back to the estate agent to put on the market. And the only reason I would do that is not every area is going to be good for investment, right? Where I live, the average 3-bed is like 850 grand, rents out for £3,000. That yield doesn't even cover what the interest would be on a mortgage, so it doesn't work. So I would put that back on the market because it's a strong homeowner-occupier market, for instance. So I would look at things like it might need a redecoration. It might need a new boiler. Maybe I can bring the EPC rating down. Maybe that's what's putting people off. Maybe the kitchen and bathroom just need a light refurb. But I'll never do it so it goes over maybe 7 or 8 grand. That's kind of my limit. I've got a low risk aspect purely because I feel I don't need to have I don't need to take high risks because the margins that we make on, say, overage sourcing on a deal, making 10 grand fees, why would I put 10 grand into something to make 10 grand when I could make 10 grand by not putting any money into a deal, that kind of thing. So if I'm putting 10 grand in, I want to make 20 grand profit minimum. So couple of examples that come to mind. We had a property that was brought to us. It was an E-rated EPC, and this was around the time when there were all the talks that you wouldn't be able to get a mortgage if it wasn't a C and stuff like that, and no lenders were lending, and all the owner kept doing was just dropping the price, thinking that's what was going to sell. Well, that wasn't going to change the kind of aspect of someone saying you still can't get a mortgage. So we priced up the quickest way to get it to a C. And when I say a C, we were like 1 or 2 points from a D into the C. And it was to get a new boiler, change the thermostat, and change the light bulbs. And the light bulbs was that one thing which was like, it just took us a couple of points over. And I think in total we spent like 3.5, 3.7 on it. It was absolutely nothing. And we made 16 grand profit after we got our money back. And that turned around in 2 months. And even before we started doing the works, we'd already placed a buyer on it. So we'd already, because there was nothing visual that was going to change, we just said to them that you're going to get a new boiler, you're going to get a new thermostat, and you're going to get, it's going to be more energy efficient. We're going to get it down to a C. You can have it for this price. And that price was the end value price, the original listed price. And that one worked really well.
It's incredible. Another
one was just literally changing the lime green, the orange, the terracotta walls. One of the walls, which was a bare brick wall, had been painted pink, and someone had gone round it with a black Sharpie and drew the brick outlines. Like, people couldn't see past it. 5 days, 50 litres of white emulsion, a shower screen put on, and just doing a fence, like really minor things.
Wow.
We made 26 grand for like 5 grand investment.
That's incredible.
And again, that was a turnaround in 3 months. And obviously there's more to it. So we offered to pay for their, we offered to pay for their mortgage payments each month, which were interest only. So it was like £180 until it's sold. The one with the boiler, we paid for the tenants to stay in a hotel for 2 nights while that was done, because they wouldn't have any hot water. So there's lots of, like, again, creative ways of doing it. Sometimes you might have to offer an incentive. You have to pay for their legals, or maybe you pay for their early repayment fee on their mortgage, whatever it might be. But because you're always making it a minimum of 200% margin, you've got that kind of flexibility. But I see so many people out there doing it, and they're like, so what profit share do you do with the owner? And I'm like, well, none. They're not taking any risk. And they're like, oh, right. Well, you don't give them any money. Like, we give them 50%. And I was like, for what? Like, you're helping them. You're providing a solution to them. If they're happy to accept 100 grand, whatever price you get, because you've invested your money and you've taken that risk, because there is still risk attached to it, right? If you say, my contract's for 12 weeks, and you don't sell that in 12 weeks, or you don't find a buyer in 12 weeks, you just spent a load of money on someone else's property, and you don't get any return for it. So there are risks, but that's where you only make the calculated risk. So like I said, small margins, small investments for maximum margin. And the other thing that I would say as well is obviously niching it down so you know it attracts your investor base already.
That's interesting. Very interesting strategy. I've heard about it, but I've never really seen many people doing it or doing it successfully. But that's very interesting. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Obviously, you've got your events. If anyone wants to book on the events, what's the best place to book? Or if anyone wants to find you, where's the best place to find you? Yeah,
so all socials, Paul Stapleton, and the event is June the 15th in Milton Keynes. It's called the Property and Entrepreneur Summit. It's a full-day event, no pitching. It's a no-pitch promise. Some huge guests. So we've got the likes of Rob Moore, Simon Zucci, Saj Hussein, Daniel Priestley, Ranjan and Andrew. So there's some really big people coming on. It's just going to be a wicked day to learn, to network. We've invited our power team there who are sponsoring the event, so you can network and meet people such as financial advisors, mortgage brokers, accountants, solicitors, everyone that you're going to need, especially if you're first starting out. So you can find that on Eventbrite.
Spot on. And I'll be there as well. Happy days.
Wicked. Look forward to it.
Brill. Thank you so much for coming.
Wicked.
I really appreciate
Thanks,
it, Paul. All the best, okay?
Cool.
Thanks for that, Paul. I enjoyed it.
Sweet.